What up? Happy Monday. What's the deal? Welcome to another episode of How Billy Sees It. I went on Saturday, had a really good episode, and took a break yesterday. So that's that. And I'm back today. And I always want to make 15 minutes when I do these episodes. And as anyone who knows, we usually end up around closer to 20. But apart from that, there's so many things I'm trying to do with these videos, both in terms of imparting information to the audience, getting myself comfortable speaking about these things, and a number of things. We'll get into a number of them. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to spend about a minute in silence. Okay, that's about a minute. Let's get into it. Yo, why are we doing this series? We're doing this series about authenticity, about knowing who you are, about loving who you are, because it is necessary. It is a big value on a measure that we can't, and a scale that we can't fully comprehend or appreciate. Why are we doing it? We understand that who we are is actually very complex. There's several ways we can approach the question if someone asks us who we are. You can talk about yourself on a biological level, who you are. You can talk about yourself level of physics and science. You can talk about yourself, in a context of your family or in your culture, where you were born. Whatever you'd be doing, though, you'd be doing it with language, and it would be a process of storytelling. And I want to suggest, more than suggest, I know that the language we have and the stories we tell about who we are is just a subsection of who we are. It is a sliver of what we are. And as we've talked in other episodes in this series, not only is it a sliver of who we are, but the story we end up telling is highly dependent on the room that we're in, the rooms that we're in, the language and the vernacular that we're familiar with, the people that we're speaking to. You might tell a different story to an employer and a potential employer than you would to your brothers in a fraternity or your sisters in a sorority or to your mom, your coworkers, friends that you picked up, from the gym and things like this. You have different stories, different contexts, different assumptions that everyone agrees on. The friends we've picked up, the company we've kept has rewarded us for being who we are. Who we are, a certain version of who we are, and has given us accolades and rewarded us and said that this is cool, we appreciate you. And then there are other parts of the self that maybe those very same groups and rooms didn't appreciate, and those become subdued, those become less prevalent to you, they become less a part of your story, even though they are you. And then if you were to move in another room, and this does happen in different rooms, we present ourselves differently. We talked about this in other episodes. Again, I'm trying to stay to 15 minutes. Let's see if we can today. But it's storytelling more than what we know. So we don't know who we are. We don't fully engage with who we are. We have to do things like to ground ourselves in ourselves, and to meditate, and to take note, and to pay attention to our experiences and our interactions in the world, to get a real and better grasp of who we are. So part of this whole series is to really draw our attention to the fact that the things that we do, who we think we are, is not entirely, and is probably largely, I don't know what percentage to give it, but a large lion's share of this discourse on ourselves, on this experience of ourselves, um, has been handed to us. It has to do with the external gaze. It has to do with fear and safety. and adjustments that we've made to ourselves, creative moves we've made for our identity to feel safe and to feel belonging and to receive love. And that's okay, and that's part of the human experience, but that to know the self will require something deeper. It'll require a self-love, okay, one where those words and those assumptions, the group identity will need to be examined further, and you'll see these pain points and you'll allow yourself to actually flourish and be your fullest self. So we're looking at the story that we tell ourselves, and we're challenging the whole idea of these stories. We're saying that these stories are inherently limiting and that there's more. And so one of the things I talked about in the last episode 2 days ago was paradox. We brought up paradox. What is paradox? You really think about what paradox is. Paradox is, it can be experienced as a kind of point of tension. It's when two things that are contradictory in our minds, two things that are opposites, are held together. And it becomes a paradox. You're like, that's not possible. There are two things. But the paradoxes exist all over the place. The truth is that this is all one thing. This experience is all one thing. And it's very helpful to begin to notice that and to pay attention and to experience life through the lens of the idea that it's one thing. Noticing that what we've been doing is we've been experiencing it through the lens of the idea that it's this highly fractured, entirely separate, even random set of things. But paradox is able to hold the idea that we are all one and we are all infinitely not one. That's even itself a paradox. And there are lots of paradoxes like these. I'm looking at a specific kind of paradox. I'm going to run through a couple today. I'm looking at a specific kind of paradox today that relates to people's identities, how we think about ourselves, how we talk about ourselves. I talked about this last time. If you thought about yourself and you see yourself, some of us see ourselves as planners. We're organized. We get things done. We have a calendar and a schedule, and we're planners. And that's good. If you have that impulse and you have that tendency, you will receive benefits from that. There's a benefit to being able to plan and organize, and if that's part of your identity, that's fine and great. But at some point, the world will challenge you to live in something unplanned, to engage in something a bit more improvisational, and to move through that. And you will be put in a position to have to deal with that, and to access your fullest self, your God consciousness, your full awareness of what is. That challenge will present itself, and when you walk through it, you should be able to. I mean, again, being able to actually incorporate the story will allow you to realize that you are also improvisational. What you once said that you were a planner, you're also someone who can roll with the punches. You're also that. When you said that you were a planner, that was a story, even a good and accurate story. It was still a story. Another identity we might have is the identity of the giver. Like, we are people who give. You're a good you might define yourself as a good person, and that includes being a giver. That includes being there for your friends. When your friends need you, you pop up. You have this, and at some point the world will ask you to slow down and to receive, to not be a giver. You will eventually meet someone who is a taker, and they will be ecstatic to have you, and they will challenge your notion of the giver until it can't go anymore, and you will have to start to receive. You will be tasked with shifting your thinking about yourself and your logic about yourself so that you can notice that you also deserve to receive, and that being a good person, as you defined it, as you're attached to, is not just about being a giver. It's also receiving. At some point, it will feel bad. What felt good, this giving thing, it will feel bad because you will have been taken advantage of, and you will need to receive. Again, if you're someone, you think it's a good thing to be accepting of people, eventually you'll have to set a boundary. You'll be tasked with setting a boundary. And at each point, what I'm saying here It's simply, these things are seen as opposites, giving and receiving, being an accepting person, and being someone who sets boundaries. But it's not. It is like these are two concepts that we can sometimes attach ourselves to, and we can build identities around. And what I'm telling you is that you are bigger than that. And oftentimes when we go through moments in life that are challenging, or we go through stagnant moments in life, part of it is, you could tell a whole story about it, from this happened, and you can talk entirely about these external forces, and this person did this, and I couldn't. And that story is available, and it will be true on one level, and it could be enough for you. But I'll tell you what, to get through it, to actually see what's going on, and to achieve the next step with the release of that tension, it is on you to incorporate the story that requires you to see yourself differently. Because what may feel like paradoxical, what may feel like, oh, setting a boundary or being angry, I don't, for a long time as a child, my experience with anger was one that I didn't want to express all the time, especially as an adult. You develop this professional sense where you have control of your anger at all times. Great. That's a good thing, actually. You want control over anger. Anger should not be the only emotion that you have available to you. But it is not a virtue to discard entirely your anger. Your anger comes from an intuition. Your anger is a part of you, and your ability to include that in your self-definition may at one point feel uncomfortable. It will feel paradoxical. It will feel against the self. It will feel like a move against your identity. Your identity is this peaceful kind of guy. You're chill. No, but the world will challenge you to step and set a boundary, and to maybe express anger when needed, because it will be needed. All of this is in reverse as well. The person who is angry all the time, who has that potential for anger and accesses their anger and is willing to go there, will need to learn to access kindness. If you've taught yourself that introversion, that being chill, and you have a lot of comfort with being alone, that's great, right? And then you have potential for extroversion. You can be all those things. The people who think they're masculine, you call yourself masculine. What does that mean even? A kind of hardness and aggression, and a willing to take action. Logic orientation. Very active thing. You can do that, man. I did that for years in my grind days when I was, started my business, BB Digital. Put in like literally 24-hour days, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes 19-hour days, weeks of just going at it and finding clients and handling the budget and this and that. And I thought that is a virtue, and I needed to rest. It's only years later, man, with, again, bringing up my excellent wife, I've been challenged to notice that the universe now will reward me for my rest and my capacity to accept and to receive. When I thought I needed to be active, the only way I can get an accolade or to get a client or to be seen or to receive love was to be active. Well, now I need to be relaxed so that things come to me so that I can have them. If I tell myself that everything is dependent on my action and grinding, then I will tell myself that I will never get to a place of just being able to relax and enjoy. I told myself the story that every time I relax, every second spent sleeping or napping or dreaming or playing, that this is a waste. Well, then you can go your whole life doing that. And you will have created that story. You will have created that identity. And what you've done is you've pushed away the joy and the ease. You keep pushing it away. But this is you doing that. There are some people who really identify as a student, They identify as a good listener, and they're very open-minded and open to new information. That's great. That's incredibly good. And then at some point, and again, all of these things you can stay down one line for your entire life, but at some point, if you want to achieve this other thing, if you want to, shall we call it God consciousness? Let's go with that. You want to achieve a full awareness of what's going on, you will have to step into the role of leader, of the not listener, of the person who gets it, who knows, and is not seeking validation, and is not seeking a leader who can tell them what to do. And vice versa. The person who's much younger, who stepped into leadership roles very early and keeps acting this way, will have to at one point listen, look around and notice that they don't know everything. Sometimes you're this leader who keeps being active. Let's say this masculine leader and you've had rewards for this, and things have gone well for you, successful this and that, and now you keep building, and you're so active, building and doing what? The same thing over, and at some point the world is shifting, the world is changing so fast in every moment. You don't realize that you're doing so, you're building all the way over here. The world has shifted. You have to now pay attention and learn from the world around you and from the people around you, and be a student again. And that's the paradox that's occurring all the time. What I'm pointing to is the challenge of identity. You don't know yourself. You have a story that you've told of yourself. We talked about the different ways we can talk about this experience. I want to add a linguistic component that people often miss. Our language doesn't deal with paradox well. It can't. When you meet someone, you never describe yourself as both, you know what I'm saying, kind and also angry. You never describe yourself. You might say, I'm a giver. You don't say I'm a giver and a receiver. You don't say I'm logical and intuitive most often. We have words like ambivert, but you don't quite often say that you're an extrovert and an introvert, even though you are all those things. We just talked about how paradoxically we are all one thing. It is all one thing. All of these are concepts. But linguistically, we describe ourselves in one way. We have an object, and then we have adjectives, in the sentence, you know what I'm saying? And you typically pick one. So the language doesn't lend itself to paradox. We say that something is hard. Well, the truth is it's hard in a context. That tree is hard if I were to hit it against my hand, but the tree would not be hard as compared to something steel. A hot summer day is hot as compared to the winter, but it isn't as hot as the sun. These words congeal a story, and the story is adequate enough, it's good enough for us in a context, but the truth is even more complex than that. But linguistics does that. So the words, the stories we have are putting us in a box. The stories we have are self-imposed boxes. Which can go unnoticed for our entire lives. And quite often those boxes were created by ourselves in collaboration with the people around us. As we are seeking to be loved and to be seen and to be respected, you want to be seen as respected, and you understand what the room needs, and you very, on a level that is hard to perceive, you are limiting yourself in order to be safe in these conditions. And the truth is even bigger than that. So I'm going to end it in just a few seconds. We are bigger than what we know. Our story is an inherent limitation. One of the most powerful ways to go beyond that is to notice those places that have fear. This thing we call fear is sometimes an anxiety, a tension, an unknowing. The unknown areas are spaces that are just unknown parts of the self that can be explored. And when explored, will unveil an even deeper, wider possibility and a truth about what is possible that will challenge everything we thought we knew. And I'm at 20 minutes. So I'm gonna end it there. But who are we? We're gonna continue to explore who we are and the stories we tell and the techniques and the ways that we can navigate the question and the blocks, like why this is a challenge in the first place, why such a simple question of who we are can be such a challenge. See you next time. How Billy sees it. See you tomorrow.